I'd like to introduce the second speaker, Compassion and Consideration. Please help me welcome Ed.
I'm an addict in recovery. My name is Ed. Come on, Ed. And I'm clean through God's grace and this program called Narcotics Anonymous. And, it's an honor, right, and a privilege, like Randy said, to be invited anywhere. You know, I was that crackhead that was banned from the neighborhood crack house, even though it was an abandonment. Right, they told me that I wasn't welcome because I didn't like to share my crack. And I don't say that to get laughs or chuckles, but when I do, that means somebody in the room used like I used.
That's right.
Right? It's all the identification I need to feel welcome, to feel a part of. Randy did a great job, right? I met Randy when he had Days Clean. And I've had the honor and the privilege of sponsoring him for the last few years. And the man that spoke before you wasn't the man that I met. The things that happen in recovery, they're nothing short of a miracle. I'm a man that uses my words very selectively. I really believe in the English language. I believe that if you don't understand a word, you should go and look it up. You know, when I got clean, this didn't exist, and so there was a dictionary. You know, my sponsor used to make me use a dictionary to go and look words up, right? And today I still, you know, I'm educated. You know, I have a master's degree. I help people. I'm in the helping business. You know, I've been in the field of treatment for 27 years. You know, I've been doing this thing called recovery for a long, long time, right? And along the way, I found out that and I don't know about you, but I have a self-destructive personality that cries out for failure, right? No matter what I do, no matter how good it looks, no matter how many times I serve, no matter how many times I tell you that I love you, no matter how many times I prove to that I'm a good, no matter how many times I still, with 30 plus years clean, still have this thought process that'll put me in a place that I want to die without the use of drugs. You know, I'm like Rand. I didn't come here to learn any of this stuff. Trust me. I came here to stop smoking crack cocaine. As a matter of fact, I wasn't a crackhead until I came to Narcotics Anonymous. Right. Yeah, I used to smoke coke. I'm just saying, I was better than. Crackheads were not, you know. I'm just saying. Right, because I came here, but I was an egomaniac with an inferiority complex. I lived up here, but felt down here. Right, I was in a place of, you know, I got to figure it out. And I could figure it out. Like, you know, I came here with an education. I had a bachelor's degree when I got here. I just couldn't stop smoking cocaine. And in that process of coming here, there's some things that happened along the way. Right? Some things that I wanted, but I didn't know how to get. Right? This is a program of follow direction. It's not complicated. It's a program of follow direction. But this doesn't allow me to follow, because it wants me to guide. It tells me things that I want to hear, and it tells me things that I don't want to hear. And I have a choice, unlike when I was using drugs. I have a choice on what I'm going to listen to. Because our literature in Who's an Addict, it says it very clearly. Many of us, right, Mom? We were at least 2 people instead of 1. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And if you look at least, we know there are 2 of us. But that means that there's possibly more. We know there are 2 of us. But if it's at least, who are you going to serve today? Where are you going to put your eggs in for today? Because life doesn't care about how long you clean. Life doesn't care about how many steps you work. Life doesn't care how many conventions, how many meetings, how many people you speak. Life doesn't care about, and I got evidence of that. You know, on June the 9th, 2012, my 21-year-old son died from a heroin overdose. I had 17 and a half years clean when that happened. You guys lied to me. God lied to me. You told me I was going to live happy, joyous, and free, and there was no happy, joyous, and free in that event. As a matter of fact, it's an event that doesn't have a name. If I lost my parents, I'd be an orphan. If I lost my wife, I'd be a widower. I lost my son, it doesn't have a name. How do you heal from something that doesn't have a name? How do you work through issues that you didn't think you were ever going to have to work through? And like Randy said, you guys are very annoying. I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to come to meetings. You guys showed up at my house. You guys brought me food. You guys took me to meetings. You guys nursed me back to life. You guys showed me that God, in His infinite wisdom, gave me 21 good years. I no longer focus on what I'm not getting. I focus on what God gave me. And that's how I get out of bed. Compassion. I'm going to talk a little bit about the topic. And again, I don't need the book. I got it. Technology. Compassion, right? Its definition is sympathetic pity and concern for the sufferings or misfortunes of others. And that's what compassion is. Consideration is being able to consider the thoughts of others outside of what I'm feeling or thinking. Right? Compassion in the basic text, that word comes up the most, and more will be revealed. In that chapter, more will be revealed. In the Living Clean book, it comes up 4 different times, and it starts off in growing pains, which is the beginning of that book. Right? And so what is sympathetic? It's interesting because our literature is like, I believe that desperation is pretty bad. I believe that we're all here because of desperation. here because of a drug problem. Because I didn't have a problem with drugs. I only had a problem with drugs when it ran out. I didn't have a problem with drugs. It was only when it was running out that it became a problem. Like my father left when I was 5. My brother had a car accident when I was 8. I was the only eyewitness to that accident. No one ever told me that that accident wasn't my fault. My brother, 3 years later, came home from the hospital, and he was the mentally retarded kid in the neighborhood. We don't use that terminology today, thank God. Now it's cognitively impaired, more appropriate. But he was the retard, and it was my fault. And so the first time I used, right, was seeking relief from something that began at 8 and ended at 11. And I couldn't tell anybody because it was the first time that I was sexually molested and raped. And because my brother was in the hospital, I couldn't tell anybody because I believed they wouldn't believe me. So I learned at an early age how to keep secrets. And the literature says it very clearly. Secrets keep us sick. So I'm lit. And so drugs, and I don't know if this is a drug or not. I just know that I gave $1. They went to the bum in front of the liquor store. He came out with 2 bottles of MD 2020, and that was the first drug. I don't know if you write it, if you look at the ingredients in that bottle, there's no grapes in there. So I don't really know. Right? But what I do know, right, is that drug was the first drug that I ever put in my body that allowed me not to feel. And it happened in a hallway in the Bronx, and I was stuck like Chuck in that hallway for 22 years, looking for a way out. And so in that process, right, of using, I got to a place of not being able to identify with anybody in my life. I was different, but I didn't know that the secret was what was making me different. Like Randy mentioned this, the Me Too that happens here is the greatest 2 words that could ever happen to us. That we can identify with somebody else. Right? And so sympathetic, right, has another word. It comes from the word of sympathy. And sympathy is feelings of pity and sorrow for someone else's misfortune. Right? I believe that what we do here is an act of sympathy, is an act of compassion. Right? It puts us in a position of helping somebody else. Because self-centeredness is the core of our disease. Right? In our literature, right, in More Be Revealed, right, it says, we come to know ourselves for the first time. I thought I knew myself. Like I don't have, listen, my story, I never been to jail. I never been to rehab. I never been to detox. I went from smoking crack to NA. That's my story. Because I don't know about you, but we always got that one person. I had that one person. When we get as bad as him. So I had that one person in my life. His name is Ray. When we were teenagers, he blew half his leg off. He forgot to take the one out the chamber. And when he was cleaning his gun, the bullet went off. And it blew half his leg off. So Ray was crazy. He was crazy. So at the end, Ray disappeared. And he showed up. We thought he was dead, or we didn't know. But he showed up and he was talking this crazy ass language. He looked good too. gain some weight, you know, because that's what happens here. And he started saying, there's a better way to live. You don't have to live this way anymore. And we were like, yo, dude, we don't know about this better way to live. If you ain't getting high, you got to go. But at the end, I don't know about you, and I used to be afraid to say this. I'm not afraid anymore, though. I used to hear voices. Not voices in my head. Audible voices. And I couldn't tell anybody that. Because I didn't want anybody to think I was schizophrenic. But the voices used to say things like, don't do it. You're gonna get caught. And every time I heard a voice, I got caught. Every time. So at the end, the voice said, call Ray. Yeah, I'm not calling Ray. That guy's crazy. At 5 o'clock in the morning, when I had no more drugs and no more money, I called Ray. And he picked up the phone. And he spoke to me for 12 hours. And he only said two things for 12 hours. Don't use and go to a meeting. Ed, don't use and go to a meeting. You know, and so at the end, so I'm on the phone with, you know, and he's telling me, get in the shower, just get in the shower. And all I was thinking is the CIA and the FBI can get in. So I would turn the shower on. You ever been trying to get in the shower? That was me. I was trying to get in. I was trying to follow direction, but... And I end up at my first NA meeting because I don't know if you remember, but back then, these didn't exist, but they had the big cell phone that you had to pull the antenna up, right? So Ray, I was just in a workshop about manipulation, character defect. Ray manipulated me. He says, I'm leaving my house now. Now, I lived in Edison, New Jersey. He lived in the Bronx. He's coming. And then he calls me from his cell phone. And you could tell back then when that was happening. And he says, I'm on the GWB and there's traffic. Get in the car and go to the meeting. And that's how I got to my first NA meeting. And what's interesting, I walk into this meeting and there's a guy outside. And it was a young people's meeting. East Brunswick, New Jersey, doesn't exist anymore. And that guy, he says to me something very interesting. He said, first time here? And I was like, whoa, how does he know that? Right? Like, it's his home group. He's a greeter. He never saw me. First time here. That's what happened. And then I walk into this meeting, and the church was having a function, so all the adult chairs were gone, and addicts were very resilient. They went into the nursery, and they brought all these kindergarten chairs. So everybody's down here, right? And so I walk into the room, and I'm like, all I can see is purple hair, orange hair. It's a young people's meeting. Tattoo, you know. I was like, where the hell did Ray send me? This is crazy. But what happened outside, before I got in the room, that guy, that kid, when he said first time here, I went to give him the cool guy handshake. And he looked at my hand and he said, we don't shake hands here, we hug. And before you knew it, he had me. like he had me. And everything, now, back then I was 130 pounds, and I'm telling you, it took everything inside of me to want to push this kid off of me. And the more he felt, the tighter he squoze. And then he said something that was miraculous. He said, "You never have to feel this way again." And my head said, "How does he know? How does he know what I'm feeling?" I'm talking about compassion. He was giving me compassion in real life. He was connecting with me. He was giving me his sympathy. He understood what I didn't understand. He put me in a place that I wanted. Now listen, I walked into this meeting and I set this little kindergarten chair up because Ray's coming from the Bronx. I set the chair up where the door is right there. Ray's gonna see me when he walks in. But I didn't know that I was next to the coffee pot. So that whole meeting, all I saw was tits and ass. Not because that's what I was looking for, but that's what the position I was in. And majority of the people that were in the meeting getting coffee were women. That's, I wasn't looking for that. But that's what happened. And in that process, I began to feel some stuff that I had never felt before. I got an understanding of how truly important it is to serve other people. Right? The literature, right, when the literature says, right, we come to know ourselves for the first time. We experience new sensations. To love, to be loved, to know that people care about us, and to have that people care about us, and to have concern and compassion for others. We find ourselves doing and enjoying things that we never thought we would be doing. I didn't want to be outside hugging people. I didn't want to make coffee. Yeah, you know why I got a coffee commitment? Because somebody said to me, the coffee guy don't get high. And I was like, how do I get that? Because I don't want to get high. And my sponsor at the time said, get 30 days, you can get it. Total manipulation. Total. Now, I got clean in Middlesex County. It's a predominantly white neighborhood. I'm Puerto Rican. I don't know if I look. I'm Puerto Rican. They brought Maxwell House and Folgers, like. I brought Butelo to the. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. My home group was on fire. People would leave it. I'll see you next week. Genuine concern for others. Yeah. I mean, back then I used to consume caffeine. I just celebrated 26 years without it. Right? Like, listen, it's July 7th will be 31 years clean. August 12th will be 30 years no nicotine.
Nice.
January 1st, I just celebrated 26 years no caffeine. No chocolate, no soda, no caffeine. Right? No caffeine. Right? I don't know what a Red Bull is. I think that would mess me up. And October 1st, I'll be celebrating 19 years with no sex with self and no pornography. Right? Now, I don't tell you that so that you can clap. I tell you that because that's my reality. Right? And I'm not, listen, the 10th step, it says very clearly, it says this step is a great tool for avoiding grief before we bring it on ourselves. It says we monitor our feelings, emotions, fantasies, and actions. This is the first place in our literature that it talks about fantasy. So, right, fantasy was something that I'm connecting pornography to this. Right, fantasy, right, is things that I think I want. Right, because listen, my first drug of choice was fantasy. Right, I had heroes. Some of you may not be old enough. I know Louis is. Some of you may not be, but Underdog was my first hero. You know what I mean? And he was a drug addict. He was a drug addict. He used to take his ring and take a pill and become somebody else. Popeye was a sex addict. He would, right? He would take out the spinach only when issues with olive oil. Right? So he could protect olive oil, right? So Popeye was a sex addict. Right? I'm talking about people that I grew up, fantasy. And so as I, came here and I started looking at these things, right? The 12th step says this step. But it says the lessons we learn in our recovery are sometimes bitter and painful. The very next sentence says, through these lessons we gain the reward of self-respect as we're able to share them with other members of Narcotics Anonymous. So I have a responsibility that when I go through something that I get to the other side of, that I come and I share about it. Right? And listen, I know I'm being judged. Do I care? No. Because I serve a loving and caring God who has molded me into this place, right? That nothing that you as a human being can do. Listen, he challenged me when he took my son. Challenged me. He put me in a position of saying, are you real? And so in that third step decision, right, when it says this decision, right, implies action, what am I doing, right, to put myself in a position where I can now show compassion to others? I haven't even talked about consideration yet, but we're getting there, right? So part of that process of compassion is I have to be open to not being so self-centered. It's not just about me, right? When I read this, check this out. In Recovery and Relapse, it's probably the most powerful chapter or paragraph in the basic text. I love you, bro. So, in Recovery and Relapse, it says that obsessive behavior, right? Obsessive behavior is a common denominator for addictive people. Right? It says that we can never get enough. It doesn't say sometimes. It says never. We can never get enough. It says specifically, right, that sex, we can never get enough sex, we can never get enough food, we can never get enough money. It says, right, that we use manipulation, ego, lust, or false pride to get through our situations. Right? So, with 12 years clean, I went through what I thought was going to be the worst pain ever, which was I found out that my wife was cheating on me. She was having an affair, and it wasn't with me. Right? Now, I met my wife in detox. And if you followed my story, I never been to rehab, I never been to detox, but I met my wife in detox. She had 0 days clean. I was the counselor, she was the patient, and I was going to marry her. If you're in the world of treatment, not a good idea. Actually, a very bad idea. And so I rode that roller coaster for the first 10 years of her recovery. And we had a child back then. I don't want to forget, right? It gets even more inappropriate. So I'm 17 years older than her. So you do the math. Today it's not inappropriate, but back then it was inappropriate. So we had a daughter by the time she was, my wife was 20 years old. And today that daughter's 25. And she's doing phenomenal. But in that process of finding out she was having a relationship is when I looked at the thought process of lust and not getting enough sex, and I became sexually sober. I sought outside help. I did whatever I had to do to stop acting out in secret. And what had happened was I developed something called self-respect. I stopped the behavior and I gained self-respect. Right? And what that has done for me in my recovery, right, is allowed me now that when I look at women, they're people. I don't sexualize them. I don't objectify them. I love my wife, even though she broke my heart. And we were apart for 5 years. I mentioned that I'm Puerto Rican, right? So I got this other thing inside of me. Well, I don't like it, but I got it. It's called machismo. It's horrible. I don't even know where it came from. But she had to go. And for 5 years, we had no contact other than I'm on my way to pick up our daughter, I'm on my way to drop her off. And when my son died, my wife was the second person to show up at the hospital. And I don't know how she found out that my son had died, because it wasn't her son. And at my son's deathbed, the gift and magic of forgiveness took place. And if you don't know what forgiveness means, it means canceling the debt. And me and my wife got back together for purposes of having a mommy and daddy back for our daughter, who was 12 at the time. And this is where consideration comes in. I had to consider what was best for someone else, not in the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous, that had to do with me being a father. And through that process of consideration, I had done some step work, right? That, 8 and 9, right? Understand rather than be understood. Forgiveness, whether you're forgiven or not, right? Put on the list what I did, not what they did to me. Like, these are the things that I was going through when I was experiencing consideration. And my wife and I got back together. We've been together now almost 14 years, and she's the love of my life. Like, there's a lot of beautiful women in the world, but there's nobody more beautiful than my wife. When she was sitting in detox, withdrawing from 15 bags of heroin a day, I felt the same way then that I feel right now. And in that process, and I know I got to shut it down. In that process, I got to a place. Right. So, I went back to school. I did a whole bunch of things that, I started a business. I worked for the Board of Ed. I just retired from the Board of Ed. Right. Full pension, all of that stuff. Right. 22 years of service. I worked with special needs kids. I just love what I did for a living. And 17 years ago, I started my own business, and so I'm a therapist. I have people who work for me. I have a couple of offices. I'm really doing God's work, right? And so, as I'm preparing, one of the things that I have to tell you, my 25-year-old graduated last year with a master's degree. Right? And you know what the beautiful part of it is? Not that she got a master's degree. It's that she graduated with zero debt. She graduated with zero debt. No student loans. Right? Mommy and daddy took care of that. Right? And then when I was 55, my wife got a bright idea. He talked about bright ideas. She got a bright idea. She said, "You want to have another kid?" I'm 55 years old. I don't really know. Sure. So I have a beautiful 7-year-old daughter. And in that process, right, I learned how to be a father from a whole different perspective. A whole different perspective. But then it got even better. When my daughter was 3 years old, my wife said, Julia they're going to grow up. Do you want to have another kid? Sure. So we have a beautiful 4-year-old son. I'm 63 years old. Right? In April, next month, I'll be 64. Right? I'm retired. Right? I get to spend a lot of time at home. I get to play, Legos. What's that game? Operation? That game, I get to do things that I didn't enjoy as a kid. Right? My son walks into the house, and out of nowhere, he just looks at me, he goes, "Daddy, you're the best." I'm talking about putting myself in position to have compassion and consideration for somebody else that you guys taught me from a place of self-respect, that I too can live a dream beyond my wildest dreams. Right? And so, I'll say this and shut up. My son who died, I mentioned that he died on June the 9th, 2012. My son who was born on June 11th, 2021. And so God, in His infinite wisdom, when you guys said, don't quit 5 minutes before the miracle happens, I thought it had to do with drugs. And the miracle in today, because we only live this program in the moment, I go from devastation and sadness that used to be 365 to 48 hours. From devastation to joy. Death to life. And a program like this, that I thought I just wanted to stop using drugs, has taught me how to have not only compassion for others, but consideration that I too can be a good father. I too can be a good husband. I too can have self-respect. I too can, listen, whatever you came here for, and we all came here for a reason. You may think you came here to stop using drugs, and that's okay. But you also came here to find something. And Narcotics Anonymous is going to give you exactly what you came here for. So stay on the path of the miracle. Because if you stay on the path of a miracle, Narcotics Anonymous is going to give you that miracle. Whether it's money, property, or prestige that could divert you, or it's money, property, and prestige that you could use to give to others. Right? Because that's the key. Right? That's the key. So listen, I'm done, right? Listen, if you're sitting here, man, and I said something that touched your heart, thank the God of your understanding. And if you're sitting here and you're a little confused about what came out of my mouth, I apologize.
Can we thank Randy and Ed one more time, please?